I'm Henry Jake Foreman, and this is my reflection from day one. Just being a part of the preliminary panel and just beginnings of the conference was really inspiring for me. I really was just inspired by knowing that we're in the most biodiverse place in the world, and I feel like that was something that I was thinking about all day. Not only how we transact with money and resources, but how are we really stewarding the land and biodiversity? How can we integrate this into the conversation? Of course, I was struck by the lack of Indigenous representation, but I'm also glad that we're all here in the table to really talk about these critical aspects, things about infrastructure, access, really making a place that is very inclusive to all communities. And I've seen that in some of the panels and some of the presentations that we are a part of, especially around working with undocumented people across the world and how Interledger could be a potential resource and opportunity. But yeah, I was struck by a lot of the conversations that I was hearing. And really, again, how this is not just about computer and software development, but it's really about community development. And that's really what I'm inspired by, is like, how can we build a larger community beyond this conference?
Do you have ideas for that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we're doing it right now. I think having diverse groups of people, like having this conversation after conferences, coming up with new project ideas, new collaborations, and just really starting to build a larger coalition.
And Chitinthi, you were commenting earlier today on some of what needs to happen in order for this to be accessible to some of the communities that you've worked with or currently.
Yeah, I just noted, I follow closely an elder who is from my community in Zimbabwe, and he was asked to come and speak at a summit similar to this one. And he mentioned that, one of the biggest challenges about the way we meet in these spaces is that we enclose ourselves in a room and have a projector screen, when really these types of conferences should be happening outside, with all life surrounded by us and for us, because we're part of a bigger biodiverse environment. And also the fact is that if we're really planning for future generations, why aren't the youth involved in these spaces? We can't be planning on behalf of people that we really don't understand their experience, as we've seen generations change from one to the next. So in order to truly address some of these challenges, we need to be working with everyone in the room and in the spaces. And I would say, I was really impressed with some of the dialogue that's going on throughout the day. However, there's opportunity for growth, and even having more of a diverse, group here is meaningful in itself, because often conferences have a specific view to them, and the people who are involved are often, from particular communities and not inclusive of others. So I think there has been openness to dialogue throughout the day that I've noticed, and people are open to hearing about where the gaps are and where they can improve. There's lots to be done. As Jake just said, it's really the community building that comes first, in my view, in order to truly address some of these conversations of how to make open payments truly open. It's really about opening ourselves up to each other.
And you were talking about how you think there's a huge community that's missing here at the conference, and that you don't see outreach having been done to yet.
Yes, it's Stephanie Perrin here, and first of all, I was really attracted to the Interledger conference because I see it as a fundamental way of addressing the widening gap between the rich and the poor. The extremely rich and the poorer and poorer. So, micropayments are a way of enfranchising people to make money. So I was very impressed with the community work that was going on and some of the steps to get these payment systems going in different regions. I am worried because I've spent most of my career in policy development at the government level. I'm worried about where the blockages are going to come because nobody wants to take the profits out of the movement of money because guess what? They're getting rich. That's what's widening the gap. So I guess what I'm looking for is risk assessment and ally building. We don't need just community development, although it has to start there. You have to have an enfranchised community that sees what this can do for them. That's key. But then you also need allies who want to support that, and not just from some kind of a do-gooder sentiment, but they actually feel what you're talking about, that this is an ecosystem, it's a planet. They need to do it for everybody's benefit. So where are those allies, and how do you find them? And what international organizations do you reach out to? So I'm actually here to speak about standards and some of the challenges in standards development and multi-stakeholderism. And in multi-stakeholderism, basically, which is what standards development is, you can stall for years if somebody's making too much money with their protocol and a better one comes along. Well, their goal is to stop you getting the better one out, right? And so it all kind of fits into that. Where are the risks? How do we find more people who buy into the vision? And what kind of power can we bring in with them? So the community that I think could help in this is seniors, because seniors are mobile. They also have kids who are on the other side of the rich-poor divide until they die, and nobody likes to think that they should die sooner so their kid can buy a house. But there's people all around the world who are in this situation. We're short of housing everywhere in the world, from the refugee end to the middle-class enclaves across North America and Europe. It's a similar problem. So that community of seniors could bring both expertise in terms of some of these stakeholder groups that might not have heard of Interledger yet and might support it, but also in the needs, addressing this micropayment schemes. Even the biggest group that's donating to charity work can be the senior population rather than, young people. Not that we don't need young people here too, but there's a group you can touch for support for some of these programs. I think it's kind of a good group to reach out to. So.
And Art, you were, when we just touched there on, we touched on that bit about like how sometimes making money and the big groups making the money sort of are stopping change. And you were in a session earlier today where they touched on that in a really sort of disturbing way.
Is this the one about Netherlands?
Yes.
And so what is the specific question that you want me to answer?
Yes. You had some good ideas in that room about different ways of sort of, because the financial problem you couldn't necessarily tackle immediately because it was dealing with governments and things like that, but you had another approach to how to elicit change within that space.
Well, okay, so just so we're aware, that the session was specifically about undocumented migrants that live or pass through Amsterdam in Netherlands, and they were trying to actually create a digital kind of like transformation aspect to how they could actually use technology for economic economic reconciliation or economic sustainability of those people, but they didn't actually have the social fabric infrastructure and the technical infrastructure in place. And so the community is pretty much a digital authoritarian kind of community, whereas the undocumented individuals couldn't even get um, they couldn't even get a bank account without actually a SIN number or like a business like a SIN number, and they couldn't get access to services and all kinds of other stuff because if you didn't actually have that digital ID, you couldn't do that. And so I think the policy needs to be changed drastically, like yesterday, like 50 years ago already. And I also think that from a perspective that we need to create a social awareness campaign, and I strongly think that if the organizations in place uh, uh, would or could start a documentary series, podcast series, marketing campaigns, uh, blatantly shame the world into actually going, what are you doing? This is not cool. And hopefully that will actually create some social change. But getting back to the original concept, they don't even have the basic infrastructure for housing these people. They don't have the basic infrastructure that these migrants even have the technology to actually even address or initiate or activate these technologies that they want to eventually do, because if they don't actually have access to phones, laptops, computers, they don't have to actually be able to actually drive and take transit and all those other things without these digital kind of like IDs. Um, you know, it's a moot point.
And you were talking about how some things around identification has begun to be addressed using technology in Calgary.
Yeah. Oh, so there are a few things that are out there that are starting to utilize a blockchain or other kind of related technologies for the concept of verification of IDs. I know of some stories and some business cases that in Estonia, they're using a lot of really cool technology, specifically blockchain IDs for verification, for government services and all that kind of stuff. But again, going back, unless you actually have the infrastructure in place and you actually have the digital literacy and the competency of the people of those communities that actually be able to even access and understand how that technology works, then again, that's a moot point. In Canada, we are dealing with a huge issue internally and externally with the concept of verification of Indigenous verification of, are you a member of a community? And going back from a historical point of view in regards to, you know, the Indian Act and the residential schools and the 60 scoop and all those other aspects of how can we actually properly um, um, uh, register or properly verify these people that were completely stripped of their culture, their names, their backgrounds. They don't even, half of people don't even know where they come from. They don't know their actual, you know, family communities. And so there is a push to actually try to do this, but not in a first world kind of like colonial perspective, but in a community based verification of that. And being of mixed heritage myself and living in three worlds and not being connected or accepted in any of those, the concept of someone telling me that I'm not something that I am really annoys me.
Yeah. So, as you can tell from the emotion, that was a session that was it was emotionally hard. And afterwards I was speaking with Jake, and Jake spoke to that Indigenous piece with connecting with your ancestry and who you are. And I'm wondering if you can kind of share.
Yeah, I mean, we really talk a lot about story as methodology, and this kind of goes into what we've been talking about. At the end of the day, story is a way that we can share and heal and talk about and understand our identity. And that through that story is when we get that understanding. And I feel like, I think art in general is very much discounted in this world. And story and mythopoetic knowing, as we call it in Indigenous ways, like that is what we want to bring, I think, to this community. And they're doing that, and I really like that Future Money exhibit. I'm really looking forward to it and seeing how they incorporate artists and creatives into this work, because that's what really drew me into this Interledger Summit, is just seeing that connection between art and technology and, dare I say, spirituality. That's what we're bringing to.
And I think, when it comes to identity, and we've been talking about this the last couple of days around wanting to be able to be ourselves and to be openly ourselves. And a big portion of that is accessibility, which Neha has been talking to a lot of people about so far at the summit. And you had an approach to accessibility that many people were hearing for the first time, and I'm wondering if you could possibly share some of that.
Yeah, I think I'll start with asking questions to everyone, because why accessibility we don't find it in mainstream conversations is mostly because of lack of awareness and ignorance. It's not that people don't want to include it. It's just that there is not enough representation in where it has to be, whether it's digitally or in public spaces or communications or information for that matter. And so all the people that have been asking the questions about, well, primarily digital accessibility, because we are talking about technology and financial inclusion here. What I liked about was that no one pushed it under the carpet, and they were very open about accepting that we are not doing enough, and also asking question how we can do better. So the way I approach as accessibility or inclusion is design thinking. So like design thinking is a way of doing things that when you are designing things right from the start, or we are at the concept stage or the planning stage, you include accessibility and inclusion at that point. Like it's not something that you do as an addition later on, we do this something for a group of people later on because that's not our focus. But if we do accessibility and inclusion by design right from the start, it creates a better experience for everyone. And we have, like, historically speaking, most people are not aware that a lot of things that they use on an everyday basis are actually accessibility solutions. Like the keyboard that you use on your computer is a successor to the typewriter, which was invented for the blind. And you cannot live your life today without that keyboard. And you use your smartphones every day, you use texting. Texting was invented for the deaf people for communication. Pinch in, pinch out, like zooming on your phone, the smartphones that you use, it was invented for people with low vision. The voice-enabled devices like Alexa or Google Home that we use was designed for people with severe mobility impairments to control their environments around them. But we all cannot really live without them today. That is what accessibility by design is. And that has to be mainstream. That is what, it can only be mainstream like when we implement design thinking, inclusive design thinking into the products that we do, design or build, or the technology that we build, or the services that we create, anything for that matter. We have to look at it through a design thinking approach when we are talking of accessibility. Then only I think we can live in a future where people from diverse set of backgrounds are included with different accessibility needs. And we need to be aware that accessibility is beyond a wheelchair, which most people perceive it to be. And people have invisible disabilities most of the time, which are their needs are never out in the picture, because sometimes they're not even asking for it, because conservatively you have just assumed you have to live without it, without that accommodation. But why you have to live in a compromised way or mask yourself or your needs in any way when you can build an inclusive world which is for everyone?
It's Stephanie again. I think that was really inspiring me because I just happened to be trying out these new super hearing aids that are a bit annoying because they fall out and I forget and brush my hair and pull them out of my head, and I'm always worried I'm going to lose them, right? But it's such a good metaphor for how we operate as a global community, because when you don't hear anymore, you start guessing at what people are saying. And it's like you were saying, when people aren't there, when they aren't in the room, when they aren't representative, you are guessing what their needs are and what their wants are and how they would react. And we do that so much. And we've done it so much historically. And you also guess at the wrong things about them. So the discriminated communities, you know. So it is really important to put the hearing aids in, not just because the tech is fantastic nowadays and screens out the background noise and gets you to able to hear things, but it's a really good metaphor for how we get that globally functioning community to work together. And I just thought I'd share that. So if you see me poking my ears or looking around on the floor, come and help me, because I'm also going a little bit blind, right? And you don't want to lose these guys. They're tiny.
I'll just add one thing. So I'll just add one more thing. We cannot ignore intersectionality as well. So disability is not just a specific group. There are, like, when you think of diversity and inclusion, everyone is talking about, oh, our focus is women at the moment, gender is the focus, or LGBTQI is the focus at the moment. The corporations are primarily just choosing convenience when it comes to DEI, what is more convenient. But you can never forget there will always be women with disabilities, and there will always be people from the LGBTQ community with disabilities. And when it comes to ethnicity, when it comes to your race, it all intersects. So, like, imagine having a blind woman who is autistic and is also a wheelchair user and is gay. Yeah, so all of this can exist in one person, and it exists in one person. So we really cannot make that choice of choosing one over the other, really. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Hi, Saloni here. I was a speaker at ILP Summit, and initially I'm all on the tech and infrastructure and architecture side of things, and less on the group building and community building, that side of things. But I find myself in a super grateful position where I'm able to sit in this diverse set of individuals and listen to perspectives which are super different from the conversations that I have on a day-to-day basis. And this has to be one of the things that stands out the most for me in the ILP Summit day one. And I just happened to meet him, Jake, when I was just taking a walk outside the Marriott Hotel, and that's how I got involved in this whole thing. And the perspectives that I hear here are just super different from the conversations that I generally am involved in. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I'm hearing as I'm listening around the table to everybody is we've all got these beautiful voices to share. We've all got our beautiful stories to share, and sometimes really painful stories to share. And there are things we can learn about if we listen to each other. And so there's Chitinthi, who's talking about bringing in the voice of the younger audience and how important that is, to the same thing with Stephanie of looking at those senior audiences and how we can bring those people together to share and hopefully help build each other up to build that more positive future. And so I'd love to just go around and share your final thoughts from the day on either, you know, sort of a moment that it gave you that you're sort of taking forward into either the future or until tomorrow, or something that you kind of see as the next steps to this whole conversation. Do you want to start, Chitinthi?
I was really moved by the PCH presentation, even though it was quite short. However, I just liked the dynamic of how the group is working together to create the interoperability with the community they serve, the community outside across the channels of water, and then within, like really gathering all of the information they need to implement the best practice for their community. And I really look forward to building more collaborations along those lines. It's just the day continues to remind me every day that collaboration is so important. And even our conversation here, everything is not fragmented. It is all interconnected. And the more we accept that, the more we're actually going to achieve our goals.
A lot of profound, very profound, very profound. I had a similar experience that just from the very beginning, I just realized that we are a part of this larger world. And I think for me, I was just focused so much on the Southwest, the US, thinking about all the Indigenous people that we're working with. And I just realized, we have a whole world full of Indigenous people, full of people with disabilities, people that are suffering. And, that's the bigger takeaway that I have. It's like, we need to do more global work. And I think, just going back to Interledger protocol, like, that's going to make more sense as we do more global work together. It's going to be that much more important, a conversation when we start really thinking in a global way, in an intersectional way, in a, just diverse, because there is unity in diversity. And that's the big takeaway that I got.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we remember that kind of dichotomy. I mean, it's not just because we're living in the internet age and everything seems to be binary that we have this problem. Humanity's always thought in binary terms. But, when I hear about a community project in Mexico that is actually doing what we need to do, immediately we should think, well, there's no reason we can't do that in, I don't know, Taiwan, take it around the globe. So it's meshing that global vision, listening with sort of global ears to local community projects and putting equal money into each, and equal, not just money, but attention and effort. And as you say, a person is not a binary one thing or the other, black, white, LGBTQ, or, cis whatever. They're a real complex blend of things, and the world is so complex and blended, and we're traveling more than ever and intermarrying more than ever. So good luck sorting us out into our little pieces. And that's an important message, but we all can benefit from this text. So that's one message I'm going home with tomorrow.
Yep. For me, is that the reason why I'm here at the conference was to present about UPI payments, which is a payment system in India, and to kind of bring awareness as to how we kind of adopted it super quickly. And I'm super grateful that I was able to convey my emotions and my message that I had in the conference. And along with that, I'm taking home a lot of different perspectives, things that I didn't really actually think about. You know, we all listen to like accessibility stuff and LGBTQIA and all that in the media, but sitting right here with the people who are having those important conversations and being a part of those, that's one of the big takeaways for me.
I'm extremely grateful just to be in attendance, just to be in the room, just to actually have a voice in the conversation. I am grateful for the people at this table for their diverse, perspectives and backgrounds. I'm grateful for the learnings and the connections and the building of community and the potential collaboration that we could actually do in the future. I am shocked, but but um, but shocked, but um, um, can't speak.
Hopeful.
Yeah, shocked, but hopeful. Shocked, but enlightened by challenging some of the assumptions that I thought I had, and they were like knocked me on my butt today in regards to how I think about certain things and the certain situations that were presented to me. Um, I'm still reeling emotionally from this, but it's going to make me stronger to give me the motivation and the spark to actually continue on the work that I'm doing in regards to social justice, continuing on the concept for economic reconciliation, continuing on the path of truth and reconciliation, which, by the way, goes both ways, across the board, regardless of the community and background that you come from. And just, yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I've had some very interesting conversations that have ranged from a technical perspective, an ethical perspective, social perspective, and I've realized that what is so amazing about this community, and as someone who loves working on global projects, is that ILP is a community by us, for us, and with us throughout that will help us enable to reach those goals. I come from India, and I do see UPI as, although with its challenges, as a very successful adoption model. And I see a lot of addition and layers that can contribute to all of us having the agency that we desire, especially as someone who works in accessibility. What we all really need is individuality, agency, and the ability to make those decisions. And given how globalized we are, given how payments work across, for me, it's a very fascinating space to understand it, because I've always kept financial inclusion or education about it at the back burner. It's a subject that's been very, I wouldn't say very touchy for me, but it's just not something that's been very of interest to me. But as someone who's worked on global projects and looking at the different transactional rates and the payment parity issues and so many other complex issues, I find this conference an interesting way because it's very community driven. And although it's very technical at its core, but community is what is going to help it inform. It's new, it's bold, and open to change. So I really look forward to that. And for all of you tuning in, I also have my panel tomorrow, which I hope also gets attended well.
So after the first day, I think apart from, of course, attending and learning from such great sessions, what I think what I find a lot of value is building interpersonal relationships with people, like building friends for life. And like, I always like meeting new people. And when you build relationships with them, I think if you have a plan to work, you should be friends first. So that's the way my mind works, or like the way, because friends can always work better. So I've met really wonderful people today. All of them are sitting here on this table, and some more outside the table as well. And I'm glad that I'm asking questions about accessibility in all the rooms I am in. And the best part, it is always been taken in a positive way, which hasn't been in the past in most of the conferences. So I speak at a lot of global conferences. I attend a lot of conferences, and this is a very community driven experience at a summit wherein you are asking questions and no one is saying like brushing it under the carpet, or they're not kind of just passing it off. They are facing it and accepting it, and also willing to hear me out and say, oh, help us if you can. And I'm like, okay, sure. So I look forward to working with Interledger in some capacity or the other. And yeah, working with perhaps the wonderful friends I'm making.
And I guess for me, sort of the final thought, and kind of what ties us all together today, is the word ecosystem. Right where we started with Chitinthi here, and I'm actually I'm a biologist originally, and ecology was always my passion. It still is my passion, and it's always what I've loved about this Interledger community is that it's an ecosystem. And Stephanie said to me, because she was referring to Interledger as we earlier today, and she said, "Oh, what am I saying? It's because I'm just it's my first time here." And I said no, it is we, because the foundation is part of the ecosystem, but the ecosystem is all of us that bring to the table. And I'm looking around today and I keep smiling because I've had this long vision for bringing more people from the Indigenous and the disabilities community into this space. And I've been watching and just smiling because I've seen all of you making those connections in the ecosystem and bringing that power and that strength and that individuality that you all have together. And I feel a bit badly because I put Art on the spot there with the emotional piece today, but I did it because he's got this strength to him, and that strength is something that I find so beautiful, and the words that he has and how he wants to take on that fight for a community on the other side of the world from him, and that's part of what I love about this ecosystem, and I'm loving about getting to know all of you better.